Hey, welcome back, everyone. I wanted to share the footage. It's not the greatest footage. There's a lot of very harsh audio because there was a lot of honking. It was a honk for impeachment event over at Market Square Park by the West Side Market in Cleveland. And it was also cold. So sorry if, for example, it was either not focused on the right place or maybe even shaking because for part of the time I had no gloves on, so my hand was literally freezing. So here we go. This is the first couple of people that agreed to talk to me, this couple, and they were certainly pro-impeachment. So here goes.
Okay, so could you explain briefly why you think that the president should be impeached?
I think he's in violation of the Constitution of the United States and has shown utter contempt for the rule of law. And I think that he has no interest in improving. I had hoped, I had prayed that he would learn in the office, and he has proven himself to be an extraordinary disappointment, and he's corrupt to the core.
And you, ma'am?
Well, he's all about Trump. He's not about the nation. He's not about following the Constitution. I believe he's blatantly just overlooked and tried to get something on Biden by hook or crook with Giuliani. And I don't think he'll stop. You know, the minute he turns around, he says, ask China, to investigate. Where Russia, if you're listening, where are Clinton's emails? So it's all about him, and he needs to be removed.
So going back to what you said, sir, what specific clause in the Constitution are you saying that he violated? Because we do have a treaty to investigate corruption with Ukraine.
I see. So what you're really setting up here is something for like a Fox News.
So notice he didn't answer that part, which I think most people don't really care that we are supposed to investigate corruption with Ukraine. So he accuses me of being, I guess, affiliated with Fox News. I don't even watch Fox News. I don't have a TV. I maybe even watch, and this wouldn't help me with his case, but I may even watch RT more than I watch Fox News, or I watch Jimmy Dore. I watch more progressive media than I even watch conservative media. Most of my news comes from people like Tim Pool, Styx Hexenhammer, and stuff that I read online, generally from a variety of sources. So he went straight for a Fox News thing.
Or something like that.
I don't work for anyone. I work for myself.
I mean, that's what you're really setting up.
I'm asking.
So what I'm saying is,
go ahead.
Have you read any of the Mueller report?
Yes.
Or
I did
read it?
Yes.
Okay, then you have some idea about what happened in 2016.
Right, but the Mueller report did say. Remember, it did say that they did not have any evidence of collusion with Russia, and they had
no. It didn't say that.
They did say.
No. You didn't read it. You didn't read it.
So
it didn't say that there was no evidence of collusion. It didn't use the word collusion.
But did they say that?
It said in there that there were problems that needed to be fully exposed, but because the president had withdrawn people to appear before him and refused to have witnesses come forward, because of that they didn't have it, and they turned it over to the House of Representatives and said, you act on it. The Mueller report, what it did is it proved that Trump had welcomed the use of a foreign agency, a foreign government, to be involved in his candidacy. It proved that.
Okay, so I figured I would resolve some of the questions that were open that I couldn't answer while I was at the rally, while I'm editing the video. So in terms of the collusion with Russia, the American Bar Association actually published it this year. Special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation did not find sufficient evidence that President Donald Trump's campaign coordinated with Russia to influence the United States 2016 election and did not take a clear position on whether Trump obstructed justice. So that's that one.
Now, what the impeachment is on now is the fact that he has completed to ask for that again with Ukraine by withdrawing money that was voted for by Congress And the Supreme Court ruled under Nixon that Nixon could not freeze money like that, could not impound money that had been voted by the United States Congress. They voted.
So this is an interesting point, and I'll have to look that up. But from what I understand, that ruling was never it was never really enforced, and I believe the Supreme Court actually ruled. He never cited the case, so I'd have to look it up. All right, so I am not aware of what court case, while researching this at home, the gentleman was talking about, because I can't find anything from the Nixon era concerning foreign aid and assistance. But the landmark decision that I found that's usually cited is United States versus Curtiss Wright Export Corporation, which produces, I think, a lot of aviation equipment, from 1936, which has the primary holding that the president has exclusive power over foreign policy and does not need Congress to delegate power to the executive branch in this area. Another issue that I found, this is from Berkeley. So that was case law. This was from Berkeley College School of Law. It says, University of Cal Berkeley. The American judiciary has long recognized that it should leave foreign affairs matters to the political branches of government. The courts have expressed this understanding through the use of the political questions doctrine, which I think should certainly apply here. Extreme judicial deference to executive and legislative decisions concerning war and related matters. Sovereign immunity, the act of state doctrine. So sovereign immunity has more to do with foreign diplomats on U.S. soil. The act of state doctrine, and the narrow standard of review for decisions concerning immigration and naturalization. So this is from, this guy's name is David Katz. That's from 1980, I believe. And this is from Yale University School of Law. So it says congressional control of foreign assistance. Even though Congress possesses the bulk of textual foreign affairs powers, the executive has asserted authority to direct foreign assistance policy based both on the text of the Constitution and on Supreme Court precedent. So the executive is the president. Most notably, the executive relies on Justice Sutherland's dictum in United States versus Curtiss Wright Export Corporation, proclaiming the president to be the sole organ of the nation in external relations. Even though the courts have refrained from adjudicating separation of powers challenges in foreign assistance, this section argues that Congress retains ample constitutional authority to control foreign assistance. So, yes, there is a little bit of ambiguity because this argues that there should be constitutional authority to control foreign assistance. But it says here, because foreign aid slips between the cracks of textually enumerated constitutional grants of power, the separation of powers debate over foreign assistance funding hinges on relating the textual foreign affairs powers to the purposes served by foreign assistance. Congress argues that because all foreign assistance involves either an appropriation of money or a trade of goods, its constitutional appropriation and foreign commerce powers confer upon Congress plenary control over foreign assistance. The executive has four responses. First, even if Congress' power over appropriations and foreign commerce is plenary, Congress can only exercise its authority through the legislative process, which grants the president veto power. Second, the president enjoys his own plenary power to interpret and administer the law, giving him in practice discretion to modify controversial policies. So this is, I'm not going to go further into it, but I will post this if you guys want to kind of debate in the comments, either with me or each other. But essentially it says that, yeah, Congress can say, like this gentleman is saying, that we are allocating this money for Cambodia. We're allocating this money for Ukraine. We're allocating this money for Slovakia. But the president has his own plenary power to interpret and administer the law. So therefore, it's the same issue that comes up later with this lady concerning Obama's interpretation of the policy. President Trump has wide latitude of how to interpret the policy. So I don't see how this has anything to do with President Nixon at the time. But that's the best I can answer the question of what the Supreme Court says about it. But in any case, was Nixon impeached because of that? No. Nixon was impeached because of Watergate. I believe, therefore, that, yeah, the president has, in certain cases, in not just this president, I'm saying in general, many presidents have endeavored to deny the legislative branch certain things, and then they end up having a Supreme Court case that rules against the president. The same thing is happening as of right now with the tax returns. That's working its way through the courts. That's a judicial process. It's not a legislative process. What happened with the Paula Jones saga with Bill Clinton, where he was sued by a woman for sexual harassment and for pulling his pants down in front of Paula Jones in a hotel room when he was governor of Arkansas. That had to work its way through the courts, and the courts ruled against President Clinton that he could be sued on a personal level, even though he was president of the United States. That wasn't impeachable, right? So that was something that, at the time, Democrats did not find impeachable. And the Paula Jones, what resulted from it, it wasn't the issue of that Clinton was sued and that he settled the lawsuit. It was the fact that he perjured himself under oath by claiming that he did not have sex with Monica Lewinsky, which was part of the Paula Jones thing.
That could not happen, and the Supreme Court upheld the Congress's thing on that. So he is in violation of that, and you can do something for me, though. I want a favor for me. That is pure and simple corruption.
No, but he said, we want you to do a favor for us as a country. He said, we want you to do a favor for us because we've been through this as a country for the past 3 years.
No, and we don't know what it says because, he's hidden the original transcript in a vault somewhere that nobody has access to. So we don't really know what he said on the phone.
How are you to know?
All you have to do.
Hold on.
All you have to do.
Please.
No, you're setting. I know what you're
question
doing.
About the transcript. How are you to know that there's a different transcript?
Oh, it's been said.
By who?
The minute the whistleblower
so
came
no
out,
one could see it.
That's
but
right.
They locked it up so no.
So they're saying, the whistleblower said that there must be another transcript. The whistleblower never testified. The whistleblower, whose name I can't even say, which is something that I should have brought up. It didn't. This guy was not really wanting to answer my questions, even when I would answer them. But the whistleblower who never testified under oath, the whistleblower who his identity isn't allowed to be spoken in the media, it wasn't allowed to be said in the hearings, it wasn't allowed to be voiced by almost anyone involved in the process. That's the person who we're supposed to trust to know that there's a secret transcript that nobody else can see.
But he did
why did
declassify
they do that? And why did they have the ellipses in there?
Please don't touch me.
Why did they have the ellipses in there?
But all you have to do is let me ask you a question.
For those of you asking, it was the guy who he patted me on the shoulder. It wasn't the woman.
Do you agree that it's against the law to invite a foreign country to interfere with our election?
You have to cite the law. And that's not an electoral issue. This was a legal issue.
No.
You did not say anything about the election.
Oh, yeah. Do me a favor.
He's going to use this now. He's going to use this.
You can erase all that.
Thank you for speaking to me.
So, yeah, I think I even said, after I turned off the camera, I said Merry Christmas to him. And he said, he wasn't having any more conversation with me. Here was the next person, the only pro-Trump person there.
Hi, are you here to protest in favor of or against impeachment?
Oh, absolutely against. I'm tired of hearing about it, and I just wish everybody shut the hell up about it. Let President Trump do his thing. If he gets impeached, cool. If he doesn't, whatever. Just let a man do his job.
Okay, and I just spoke to a nice elderly couple that are very much in favor of the impeachment, and they said that, for instance, he did ask for personal favor in order to tamper with the election. They said that he has hidden a transcript of the call. They've said that he is inviting foreign interference in the election. There were a number of other issues that they said, and they said that the Mueller report sets the ground for the impeachment. Do you feel that any of those points do constitute grounds to impeach him?
Well, that raises a few questions. If that's the case, then why did Adam Schiff release a transcript that they now claim is not even real?
Right.
And if he's guilty of asking for favors, I could point at about 15 other politicians right off that, you know, have done the very same thing that aren't on the chopping block for whatever reason. And a lot of them, yeah, some of them are on the right, a lot of them are on the left too. So my question is, if it's not okay for him to do it, why is it okay for everyone else to do it?
Okay, so give a couple of those examples. For
Nancy Pelosi is saying that she's going to withhold things from, I'd have to see the article, but I believe it was some European country that she was going to vote to withhold aid for them if they didn't do what she wanted. And my question is, why is that okay?
So for someone who's a member of Congress, I don't think it's the same standard as the president. She's obviously Speaker of the House. I don't know if you can impeach Speaker of the House. Usually they just remove them. So I don't know if that would be a legal issue. And I think this is a very gray area in terms of legality. But I'm not sure what this guy was talking about in terms of that.
Obama did the very same thing a few times. Nobody wanted to impeach him. I take it back. Some people on the right did, but
they did not impeach him.
Nothing went anywhere.
Did not impeach him.
Exactly.
Okay.
Bush did it many times. Nobody impeached him. Clinton did it many times. He got impeached for oral in the Oval.
Right.
But yeah, every politician does it. So my question is,
do you want to be next? Sir,
can I help you?
You want to speak to us, or
I'm doing an interview.
you can come speak to me if you want.
No. So yeah,
right.
My question is, if it's okay for every other politician in recent memory to do the things that Trump is doing, why is he? All right, now the bus is passed. Why is it okay for them to impeach him, but not every politician that's done it in recent memory?
Okay.
That's the biggest reason I'm tired of hearing it. I just wish everybody shut the hell up.
So do you feel, however, that his relationship with, for example, with Rudy Giuliani, it's complicated a lot of his efforts to, I guess, gain the evidence for this other probe into the FISA court. Do you think that his choice of tactics has led to this impeachment, and it might have given fire to, or fuel to
I don't think so, no. I mean, if you recall, basically the day he was elected, people were saying, we need to impeach him, with zero reasoning whatsoever, other than they just didn't like him. And finally, I think he just made enough people frustrated, and they're like, well, let's do this.
Okay, so I appreciate your point of view, and we'll see, I guess, what happens tomorrow. And thanks for lending your voice to this.
Sure. Is this going on like YouTube or something?
Yeah, just YouTube.
Oh, what's your channel?
My channel is called Bold Like a Leopard, and if you can't find it on YouTube, it's also on BitChute.
Okay. All right. I'll look for it.
All right. Have a great day.
Thank you.
We'll see.
Hi, are you here to protest?
All right, so that was the one pro-Trump protester there that I talked to. I didn't get to see, I wasn't there at the beginning, so I think by the time I got there, they were ready to disperse. It was a pretty cold evening, and I was lucky to get some good footage, but here you go.
Hi, so why do you feel that Mr. Trump should be impeached?
So this gentleman was pretty nice, obviously a pro-impeachment protester.
For many reasons.
Okay.
First of all, he had 3 million votes less than Hillary.
Okay.
That's number one. Number two, his lies. Okay, it may not be illegal to lie, but there are countless lies. He said he would show his taxes. You don't have to show your taxes, but he said he would show his taxes. If you're going to say that and you're not, I don't give a crap about his taxes. I care what he's hiding about the taxes that he won't show.
Okay.
And I wish some 16-year-old hack could find it, because some 16-year-old hack could have those taxes in a heartbeat.
So this is a very interesting thing, and I think this is the type of person who, it really is a personal problem that they have with Donald Trump. It has nothing to do with the legal process, and even said that it might not be illegal to lie. He might not be legally required to reveal his taxes, but he says that he wishes that someone would hack into the IRS database and reveal his tax returns just so that people would know what he's hiding there. Well, he's actually, by saying that, he's hoping for somebody to commit an illegal act in order for him to see a person he hates, be humiliated or something. So it's kind of it's a difficult mindset to talk to, but I still talk to the guy.
All right, so I don't know if you can hear me because there's a lot of noise here, but you've mentioned 3 things that are not technically illegal. However, there are other presidents that have committed illegal acts when they were president, such as President Reagan diverting money to the Contras in Nicaragua. There was what happened with President Clinton, of course. He did get impeached for that. That was suborning perjury, which is illegal. Why do you feel that it's more important to impeach someone for things that are not illegal?
Okay, well, that's just the beginning.
Right.
He's got the prostitute issues. Okay, the right-wing evangelists are so holy, but they accept a man that has 5 children with 3 women that he's committed adultery on, all 3 of them. He's also...
But would you say that it's proper to... he's never been prosecuted for anything like that.
Yeah.
There's no.
Well, he's getting charged with paying off the prostitute, isn't he?
Which prostitute?
This last one. The last one or 2.
Stormy Daniels.
Yeah.
I believe that case was dismissed, sir.
Okay. Well, but
so you understand? I respect the fact that there's some hypocrisy in people of faith supporting someone who has a checkered sexual past and has cheated on 2 spouses. But those are more like vice crimes that are...
Him caging these children, these immigrants, and the ones that are dying. Why aren't they getting medical treatment?
Well, that was a previous president as well.
Well, we're not talking about that one. We're talking about now.
No, but why then would you impeach someone? That was, first of all, it's illegal. It's still a legal issue, right? And it's not been deemed illegal for them to do that. I understand your objection to it, but it's still a legal issue.
Well, I don't know what to tell you because I'm telling you my reasons for impeachment. He's been obstructing Congress. He's been instructing people not to talk. He's been instructing people to disobey subpoenas. When one lady did 18 months or 2 years for disobeying a subpoena.
So this is a legal dispute. The president is allowed to tell people who are, especially ones that are within the administration, not to speak to Congress under executive privilege exceptions. So while he might feel that that's unfair, that the president can tell people to deny subpoenas, that is part of the legal process. That it's. And by the way, in other cases of law, there are issues where a witness could be precluded from testifying. What if Melania Trump was to be a fact witness in anything that Donald Trump was doing? There is an exception in the law, and I'm not a lawyer, and you don't have to be a lawyer to understand this. But a wife or a husband doesn't have to testify against their spouse. It's just a fact. That's part, at least not in the United States, right? So yes, there are things where you could say, well, why is he telling people not to testify? That's not something that you can impeach him for.
Okay.
I don't have her name handy, but
so I appreciate.
It's okay for him to disobey everything, but not other people.
Okay, so I appreciate your opinion, and while I think like some of those issues are not necessarily valid, I think it's great that you came out here and especially in the cold to talk about it, and that you agreed to speak to me about it.
That's fine.
All right, have a great night.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Okay, so this was the last person. It's a little long. I don't know if I'm going to put the whole thing, but she was exceptionally, I think she was pretty savvy. I don't know if I got the better of her or vice versa, but here.
Be impeached.
I think he's essentially lawless. I know that the Ukraine story has legs that maybe might catch people's attention, but I think he's been lawless from the very beginning. He doesn't believe in the Constitution, and he's not supporting it, and he's basically violating his oath.
Okay, but if you're saying that, then do you not believe that it's also a problem when you have politicians right now that are talking about eliminating the Electoral College and altering the Constitution because it's inconvenient for them?
I don't think that that's the reason that people want to get rid of the Electoral College. I think if you look at the history of the Electoral College, it was designed primarily in a different era without regard to, I mean, they didn't even really believe in popular votes when they designed it. And I think, you know, people, as democracy matures, it makes sense to have it be a true popular vote rather than an Electoral College.
Okay, but you're aware that, for example, in Canada, which is our northern neighbor,
Yep.
they don't use the popular vote system either, and there was no outcry from Prime Minister Trudeau's opponents when he won last month's election with a minority, and he formed a minority government, even though he got the
That's
second.
a completely different system of government, and to me it doesn't seem like it's really something that we should be modeling ourselves on. It's like we're not going to go back to having a parliamentary system like Britain has either. It's just not how we do it.
But you would agree that Canada is considered among the Western democracies and is a full...
Oh, sure. I mean, there's lots of different ways to do it, but I just think the Electoral College in particular, it's basically entrenched power to smaller rural states.
So let's put a pause there. So she starts out, she says that Trump doesn't have respect for the Constitution, he doesn't care about the law, and then she twists herself into knots trying to say that, you know, I put out the Electoral College thing because if you have such a dedication to the Constitution and the rule of law, why is it that you look at the Electoral College as this bastion of the, I guess, the oppressive diminution of the power of the popular vote? Because just north of here in Canada, you have a system, they don't use the popular vote. You have Trudeau, who's the prime minister, who won with a minority of the, you know, it wasn't even the minority, it was the second largest tally of the popular vote after the Conservatives. Nobody here ever objected to that. And people don't look at that over here as being some sort of violation of democracy over in Canada. They never talk about that. A lot more of them are objecting to what happened in England, what's happened in Brazil. They see those things as acts of contradicting the popular will in order to feed the oligarchy.
Don't necessarily shouldn't have that much representation. It's unequal.
But if I was to speak to someone living in, you know, rural Minnesota, and
so that she's saying, well, unfortunately, I don't believe that rural voters should have as much of a say as they do.
they have to deal with things like tariffs and other things that could affect crops that they're growing and emergency services that they don't have a big municipal government to represent them. How are they supposed to get the appropriate care for their issues without some sort of clout within the federal government from things like the Electoral College?
Actually, I happen to know Amy Klobuchar, who's the senator from Minnesota, and she represents the interests of rural Minnesota very well. She actually won every county in Minnesota, including rural and urban, so I don't think people in Minnesota would have that complaint.
Right, but the fact is that most of the people who live in those rural parts of the country, they've never objected to the Electoral College, and really most of the objections have come as a result of adverse results in elections on off years. So when President Obama won Indiana in 2008, nobody objected to Indiana having electoral votes.
I'm with you. I've thought for a long time, basically since I've been an adult, that we should be getting rid of the Electoral College. And I don't care what year it is or who won. I think there should be a march over time to get rid of it because it's essentially unfair.
Right. So much of the objection to Donald Trump is, I respect you guys are here today. It's a pretty cold day. But for 3 years, people have been objecting to Donald Trump on the grounds of, first of all, some of the language that he said on the Access Hollywood tape. People have called for him to be impeached for that. People have been calling for him to impeach for boinking a porn star, things like that. But are we supposed to be impeaching people for acts that they commit in their private lives when, of course, we've had presidents like JFK who committed abominable acts of adultery in the White House?
I don't actually believe that anything that he's done in his private life, except possibly for the exception of ripping off his own charity, is an impeachable offense.
But if that happened prior to his entry into office, why is that impeachable?
Cheating on the federal, ripping off a charity, a cancer charity.
But he didn't do that in office.
Yeah, They actually did. They just shut it down like when his first year in office. He was still doing it.
No, but the issue that had came up during the election. I remember this story as well.
I'm not talking about where he used the charity to pay, although actually he did make some.
So what she's talking about is that one issue where the Donald had a charity where they sold a painting, and apparently there was some sort of stupid scheme where they sold a painting and then they overbid it and something, and I guess they wrote it off or whatever. And granted, I think he ended up having to pay a massive fine and then dissolve the charity. So that, I think, is what that's what they think should be an impeachable offense, even though he did it prior to him reaching office. But there have been several presidents who have been elected with very questionable pasts. You know, there's President Obama. Okay, let's talk here real time. He was accused of having oral sex with a male prostitute in 1999 in a cab or somewhere in Chicago, right? Larry Sinclair. Okay, this is something people have talked about. Nobody ever takes it seriously when it happened to President Obama. Paula Jones, again, I'm going to bring this up again. He was sued. Paula Jones sued President Clinton for sexual harassment, okay? And that lawsuit had to go all the way to the Supreme Court while he was president. And then he ended up getting impeached for something completely separate that was revealed through it, the Monica Lewinsky affair.
Payments for Stormy Daniels after he won the election. So he had already been elected when he was using charity money.
Are you talking about the painting that was sold by that was
No, I'm
auctioned off?
talking about the payout to Stormy Daniels for keeping her mouth shut.
No, I'm talking about the charity issue with
Right, he did that through his charity. That's where the money came from.
But that was never established in court.
I think it was, actually.
No, it was established.
It doesn't matter.
It was established that was done through Michael Cohen, his attorney.
I still think when he had a false charity that was ripping people off when he was in office, that's impeachable too.
So those checks actually did come personally from Donald Trump. They didn't come from the charity. And that was the whole thing that the Democrats decided, because Michael Cohen was saying that it was implied by Donald Trump to do this illegally, therefore it was done from the charity, even though Michael Cohen himself couldn't produce any hard evidence that money came from the charity.
Right, but those things are usually settled in a civil court of law, and he did settle that in a civil court of law.
Actually, it was a criminal court of law.
Well, then why was there only a civil penalty, a fine?
You can have criminal fines. You can have a penalty that's criminal, but it's a fine.
Okay, but
basically it was a criminal act to run a charity that was fake, that he was using to line his own pockets, to pay for things at his hotel that wasn't going to charity. It's illegal to run a charity and then give the money to yourself.
But if you're characterizing...
It's illegal to run a charity, but then give the money to yourself. Think about that for a second. How many politicians open charities and then they end up paying themselves extravagant amounts of money? Okay, you have President Obama, President Bush, President Clinton. All of them have done that. All of them have done that. So were those impeachable offenses? Technically not, because I guess in Clinton's case, I think he did it towards the end of his time in office. But the point here is that Trump was doing it before he was in office. The other presidents did it after they were in office. None of this occurred while he was president. All right, again, we were speaking on a street corner. I'm not a lawyer. I didn't ask her if she was a lawyer. It seemed like she was pretty well educated and she could have a point, but it turns out she was not speaking the truth, or she was unaware of what actually happened. This is from July 19th, 2018. It says New York State opens tax probe in a Trump foundation. That's what ended up leading to the dissolution of the Trump Foundation. And it says New York is opening up a new front in its legal battle against the Trump Foundation. After a nearly 2-year investigation, New York State Attorney General Barbara Underwood filed a civil suit against President Trump and his 3 oldest children last month, accusing their charity of violating campaign finance law, of self-dealing, and of illegally coordinating with President Trump's Trump's presidential campaign.
It as such, and this happened in New York State. Sorry, this happened in New York State. Why is it that the New York delegation hasn't pushed for this to be included in the articles of impeachment?
Because I think he's done so much stuff, you have to concentrate on the worst thing he's done, which is the Ukraine thing.
The Ukraine thing, I think, is, based on all the things I've heard, few people have said it's the worst thing he's done. And I've asked several people today. Most of them say the Mueller report. Some people have said it's because of the children in cages, things like that. I haven't heard anyone say that Ukraine is the worst issue. They say that this happens to be the issue.
I actually do think it's the worst issue because he essentially hung a country out to dry that's in a hot war with Russia. I do think it's the worst.
Under that premise, you would agree that President Nixon withdrawing our troops from Vietnam was the same thing. He effectively let Vietnam out to dry, signing the Paris Peace Accords.
I don't know. I'm not making an analogy to Nixon. I'm just telling you that we have a country that is one of the last defenses against Russia in Europe, and they were expecting almost $400 million in aid, and they're in a war, and he hung them out to dry so that he could get an investigation of Joe Biden.
So remember, she's focusing right now on, we hung Ukraine out to dry. Watch how quickly the conversation shifts.
Right, but effectively what happened was that the money was dispersed.
That doesn't matter. Everyone keeps using that argument. If you go into a bank and you hold a gun to the teller's head and you ask for the money, and before he hands it over, the police pull up and you walk out the door and say I didn't do anything, you still committed a crime.
That's a false analogy because by extending the aid to them, we are giving them something, but by withholding
he didn't extend the aid to them. Congress did, a bipartisan Congress.
Then why did the previous president refuse to approve military aid to Ukraine?
He did approve military aid to Ukraine.
President Obama? He did not.
Obama gave aid
he
to
only
Ukraine
he only gave non-lethal aid to Ukraine. That was a major sticking point during Obama's term.
And if you listen to Ambassador Yovanovitch testify, you could find out that there is a through line to what they were expecting the Ukraine to do to get increasing aid and increase what they could use it for. They didn't just turn it over from the beginning. One of the reasons
Okay, so Ambassador Yovanovitch is not a member of Congress. Ambassador Yovanovitch does not get to decide which aid goes to Ukraine or not. So if President Obama thought it was such a major priority to fight Russia by supporting Ukraine, then this whole thing where he was withholding the aid because of certain steps that Ukraine had to comply with, that effectively it's either a quid pro quo on a national level, or it's an issue of, we want to support you, but first you have to play ball for us. And those types of things, they don't really support her argument that the United States was so committed to supporting Ukraine under Barack Obama.
They didn't get lethal aid is because Zelensky had not yet been elected, and they were worried about corruption because the prior president was corrupt.
Yes, but this was the same president whose administration helped to supply a lot of details for the Trump investigation by the FBI. So in the same vein, you can't support the Ukrainian government that was biased in favor of the other candidate in 2016 and claim that they're in this major Manichaean battle with Russia between good and evil, Ukraine and Russia, and then call them a corrupt government and then question why we would withhold aid because of corruption investigation involving the vice president that was involved during that period when that corruption happened.
That's a bullshit investigation.
Why is it a bullshit investigation?
It's a bullshit investigation because they had done the...
So she's saying, well, we couldn't really support them to the end because they were too corrupt for us to support. So then I came back and I said, look, so you're saying that at the time they were so corrupt, and then Donald Trump is investigating one avenue of that corruption, and now you're trying to say that that's a bullshit investigation?
Investigation, and in fact, They had let it, the prior administration in Ukraine had let it go.
Right. But that
So they weren't doing an investigation.
But you're conceding that the vice president's son was appointed to a position as a board of directors at a far higher salary
It's not
than most
conceding
people.
anything, it's a fact. There's no concession involved.
Right, it
It's
is a fact that Hunter Biden did get that position. He was paid an exorbitant amount of money, and the Ukrainian government found it to be suspicious, and that investigation was shut down. That's a true.
That actually was not what they were investigating in the Burisma investigation. They were investigating what happened to other money that Burisma had before Hunter Biden was even involved.
So
that was the Burisma
you don't find it troubling that the vice president's son was involved in a company?
Yeah, I don't think it's great optics, but I don't think it's criminal.
Right, but are you familiar with the laws of Ukraine that you're able to decide whether it's criminal or not?
No, I'm familiar with the testimony of people like Fiona Hill and Bastian Ivanovich who said that they had let the investigation go dormant and that it was not related to Hunter Biden's service on the board. It was related to things that the president and owner of that company did before Hunter Biden even works there.
Right, but if the investigation itself had never reached completion, how do you know that no details relating to Mr. Biden would not
So do
reach?
you actually believe that like the biggest thing going on in Ukraine that should hold up $400 million is the fact that Hunter Biden had a cushy job there on a board?
Are you asking my personal beliefs
Yeah.
with respect to this?
Yeah.
I don't believe we should. I believe that our proper position with respect to Ukraine and Russia would be to broker a truce between them, not to support furthering a war between two countries that personally I don't believe should be at war. Obviously, there's a long conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and I have many Ukrainian friends
So do I,
here,
actually.
and Russian, and you know people from other parts of the USSR. But I believe that there's better ways to solve that issue than getting into a proxy war over there.
We aren't in a proxy war. We were giving them aid to fight.
We're not in a proxy war. Sure. This is an op-ed. I found it through the Federalist, but it's in the Washington Post, as you can see, from February 5th, 2015, by Fiona Hill and Clifford Gaddy, saying how aiding the Ukrainian military could push Putin into a regional war. And it says the United States is on a dangerous trajectory in its relations with Russia, a nuclear superpower that believes itself to be under direct threat. Several former U.S. officials and top think tank experts released a report calling on the West to provide military support to Ukraine. Two of them, our colleagues at the Brookings Institution, expanded on the report a week ago on this page. The logic of sending weapons to Ukraine seems straightforward, and it is the same as the logic for economic sanctions to change Vladimir Putin's calculus. Increasing the Ukrainian army's fighting capacity, the thinking goes, would allow it to kill more rebels and Russian soldiers, generating a backlash in Russia and ultimately forcing the Russian president to the negotiating table. We strongly disagree. The evidence points in a different direction. If we follow the recommendations of this report, the Ukrainians won't be the only ones caught in an escalating military conflict with Russia. So, whereas 4 minutes ago she had been trumpeting Fiona Hill's credibility, the fact is Fiona Hill at the time in 2015 under President Obama agreed with what I was saying. Sure.
Fight off an actual war.
Right, but President Bush had the same issue with the war in Georgia, and we were supplying war.
Okay, so this is foreign affairs, which, again, I think you're getting a little off base.
Right, but we're impeaching the president.
Well, we were not getting off base. She started the whole thing talking about how Ukraine was such an important ally and everything. So I don't believe we were getting off base if we were talking all about how important it was to supply all that money to Ukraine.
On a foreign affairs issue.
No, it's not a foreign affairs issue. It's actually a breaking of his oath to defend the Constitution. He's using our foreign affairs money to do something for himself personally to help him get elected again in 2020. That has nothing to do with foreign affairs, other than the fact that that's what he's trying to hold up the money for. That has nothing to do with the Congress's position on foreign affairs, the ambassadors who worked on foreign affairs for decades to try and help Ukraine. None of that is involved with him saying, oh, I want you to investigate the Bidens. That has nothing to do with foreign affairs or the position of, there was not one single person who ever testified that it was the position of the United States that we should be investigating the Bidens as part of our support for Ukraine.
Okay, I appreciate your candor. I have just one final question. Are you concerned, understandably there's conjecture as to the chances that the president would be removed from office if the impeachment vote did go ahead. However, are you not concerned that the next president, should there be an ambassador abroad that disagrees with their foreign policy, would leak details to the press in order to torpedo that foreign policy for the same reasons that the current administration has found issues with certain foreign service professionals?
I don't think that's an accurate description of what happened.
Well, you see that there's...
So no, that's exactly what happened. There were numerous people within the State Department, within the National Security Council. In fact, I think I say this.
Ambassador Yovanovitch did not disagree with Trump's foreign affairs position. Ambassador Yovanovitch was carrying out the stated position of the United States government, both the State Department and the Congress.
All right. Well, I wasn't actually referring to Yovanovitch. I was referring to Taylor. But let's hear what Yovanovitch says about an issue that she thought was not really criminal and was just bad for optics.
And they thought that Hunter Biden's role at Burisma might be significant enough that it would come up during your confirmation. Is that correct?
Apparently so. I mean, there were hundreds of questions.
Well, hundreds of questions, but were there hundreds of companies? How many companies other than Burisma did the Obama-Biden State Department prepare you to give answers for? And if so, if there were others, which ones?
I just don't recall.
You don't recall that there were any other companies, is that correct?
I'm quite sure there probably were some companies, but I mean, you know, this is a while ago and I don't recall.
But you specifically recall Burisma?
Yes.
All right. Out of thousands of companies in the Ukraine, the only one that you recall the Obama-Biden State Department preparing you to answer questions about was the one where the vice president's son was on the board. Is that fair?
Yes.
You understood from Deputy Assistant Secretary George Kent's testimony, as it's been related to you, that he testified a few days ago. Do you understand that that arrangement, Hunter Biden's role on the Burisma board, caused him enough concern that, as he testified in his statement, that in February of 2015, I raised my concern that Hunter Biden's status as a board member could create the perception of a conflict of interest. He went on to talk about the vice president's responsibilities over the Ukrainian policy as one of those factors. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
That it was a legitimate concern to raise?
I think that it could raise the appearance of a conflict of interest.
So that's an important thing, that the appearance of impropriety is a major issue that should be addressed. And that was something that the Obama administration even prepared to have to talk about at the time. And this was during the hearings that she was talking about that both of us were saying that we watched.
But Lieutenant Colonel Vindman said that he disagreed with it, and that's why he testified.
He didn't disagree with the foreign affairs position.
So did Ambassador Taylor, and so did a number of the other professionals.
They didn't disagree with the foreign affairs position of the president.
They did state that.
No, they didn't.
They stated that they had.
I watched all of it. That's not what they said.
I watched Lieutenant Colonel's testimony, and he said that he believed that President Trump's positions and his trajectory was harmful to the national security, and that it was against American foreign policy.
It was.
But
That's what I'm saying.
Then he conceded.
For foreign service, and he was carrying out the foreign service.
Hold on. He also conceded in the same testimony that his role is advisory, and it's not his decision what to do.
Agreed.
And therefore, what he was saying, it clearly shows that he was acting on behalf of his own personal views, and he did not have personal
I just
knowledge
don't agree with
of any of the
I don't
crimes.
think that's what happened, but I have to go because my feet are freezing, but it was guitar.
All right, thank you very much. Have a Merry Christmas.
All right, that was the last person, and I guess that was like almost 15 minutes she talked to me. So, yeah, there were probably a few dozen people at that impeachment rally. It was pretty cold. Then there was later an indoor impeachment meeting that I didn't go to because I had to go visit my sister. So I personally think that these people are not really winning anyone over. Obviously, this is Northeast Ohio. There was plenty of support for them because you could hear the honking and stuff like that. But I don't think that ultimately the state of Ohio goes as Cleveland goes, and I don't think that the majority of the country is really in support of this. And many people were walking by this and not really paying attention to anything. So that's about it. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also subscribe to me on BitChute and on Minds.com and on Subscribestar. If you want to donate, all of those are at Chef Leopard, and on Gab at Starscream85.